Nationalism was rising, old empires were weakening, and Prussia was quietly reshaping the balance of power on the continent. By 1870, peace existed in name only. All it needed was a spark. That spark came from Spain. In 1868, Spain was thrown into political chaos when Queen Isabella II was overthrown after years of unrest, corruption, and economic decline. Her removal left Spain without a monarch, creating a power vacuum that immediately drew the attention of Europe's great powers. The question of who would sit on the Spanish throne suddenly became an international crisis. France watched events in Spain with growing concern. The French government feared instability on its southern border, but even more alarming was the possibility that Spain might choose a king connected to Prussia. That fear became reality when Prince Leopold of Hohenzollern, a relative of the Prussian king, was proposed as a candidate for the Spanish crown. To the French, this was unacceptable. A Hohenzollern king in Spain would mean France was surrounded by Prussian influence to both the east and the south. Memories of past encirclement and foreign domination ran deep in French political culture, and public opinion quickly turned hostile. Although Prince Leopold eventually withdrew his candidacy, the crisis had already poisoned relations between France and Prussia. French leaders demanded guarantees that no member of the Hohenzollern family would ever again be considered for the Spanish throne. Prussia refused to make such a permanent and humiliating promise. King Wilhelm I of Prussia met the French ambassador in the spa town of Ems to discuss the issue. The meeting itself was polite and uneventful. Wilhelm later sent a telegram summarizing the exchange to his chancellor, Otto von Bismarck. That telegram would become known as the Ems Dispatch. Bismarck edited the message before releasing it to the public. The revised version made the encounter appear cold and insulting, suggesting that Prussia had dismissed France's demands outright. When the dispatch was published, outrage swept through Paris. French newspapers portrayed the exchange as a national humiliation. On July 19, 1870, France declared war on Prussia. What French leaders expected to be a short, decisive conflict quickly turned into a disaster. France entered the war confident in its military tradition but unprepared for modern warfare. Its army was large but poorly organized, relying on outdated command structures and slow mobilization. Prussia, by contrast, had spent years preparing for exactly this kind of conflict. Its army was supported by efficient rail networks, a professional general staff, and modern tactics developed through earlier wars. As mobilization began, the difference became immediately clear. Prussian forces, along with troops from the North German Confederation and allied southern German states, mobilized with remarkable speed. Railways carried soldiers and supplies directly to the frontier. Within weeks, hundreds of thousands of troops were in position along the Rhine. French mobilization was chaotic. Units arrived late, supplies were missing, and coordination between armies broke down almost immediately. The French war plan called for an offensive into German territory, but delays and confusion made this impossible. By early August 1870, Prussian and German forces crossed into French-held Alsace and Lorraine. The first major clash came at the Battle of Wissembourg on August 4th. French forces were caught unprepared and overwhelmed by superior numbers and coordination. 2 days later, at the Battle of Worth, French troops fought bravely but were again defeated by Prussian artillery and disciplined infantry attacks. The pattern repeated itself across the front. At Spicheren, French forces held strong defensive positions but failed to exploit them. Prussian commanders coordinated attacks from multiple directions, forcing French units to retreat. One defeat followed another as French armies fell back toward the interior. By mid-August, the French Army of the Rhine, commanded by Emperor Napoleon III himself, was in full retreat. Prussian forces pushed westward, cutting off escape routes and surrounding French positions. The decisive moment came at the town of Sedan. Napoleon III's army found itself trapped near the Belgian border. On September 1, 1870, Prussian and German forces encircled Sedan and unleashed a devastating artillery bombardment. French troops were pinned down, unable to maneuver or break out. The fighting lasted less than a day. On September 2, Napoleon III surrendered. He was taken prisoner, along with more than 100,000 French soldiers. The defeat at Sedan was catastrophic. France had not only lost an army, it had lost its emperor. When news reached Paris, the Second French Empire collapsed almost immediately. Napoleon III was deposed, and a new republican government was proclaimed. But the war did not end. The new French government refused to surrender. Prussian forces advanced toward Paris, determined to force a final victory. By mid-September, the German army surrounded the French capital. The siege of Paris began. For months, Paris endured starvation, bombardment, and isolation. Food supplies dwindled. Horses, dogs, and even zoo animals were slaughtered to feed the population. Attempts to break the siege failed, as French relief armies were defeated one after another outside the city. Meanwhile, Prussia tightened its grip on the rest of France. Key cities fell, railways were seized, and communication between French forces was severed. Resistance continued, but it was increasingly desperate and disorganized. On January 18, 1871, while Paris was still under siege, a momentous event took place at the Palace of Versailles. In the Hall of Mirrors, King Wilhelm I of Prussia was proclaimed German Emperor. The German Empire was born. This was Bismarck's ultimate goal. Through war, Prussia had unified Germany under its leadership. What France had feared most, a powerful, united Germany, was now a reality. Days later, Paris surrendered. The Treaty of Frankfurt formally ended the war in May 1871. France was forced to cede Alsace and part of Lorraine to Germany and pay a massive indemnity. German troops occupied parts of France until the payments were made in full. The consequences of the Franco-Prussian War were enormous. Germany emerged as the dominant power in Europe, unified, industrialized, and militarily confident. France was humiliated, defeated, and determined to seek revenge. The loss of Alsace-Lorraine became a national obsession, shaping French politics for decades. Across Europe, leaders took note. Wars were no longer short, limited affairs. Modern industry, railways, and mass armies had transformed conflict into something faster, deadlier, and more decisive. Most importantly, the Franco-Prussian War shattered the old balance of power. The rivalries it created, the grievances it left unresolved, and the alliances it reshaped would echo into the 20th century. When Europe marched to war again in 1914, the shadow of this conflict was still present. The Franco-Prussian War did not just change borders. It changed Europe, and it made a far greater war inevitable. The Franco-Prussian War ended quickly, but its consequences lasted generations. Germany rose unified and powerful. France was humiliated and bitter. Borders shifted, alliances hardened, and resentment grew. This war did not end history,